There are two ways to read your blood test. The first is through the lens of disease. Are you sick? Is anything broken? Are you in danger right now? That's what the standard reference range is designed to catch. The second is through the lens of optimization. Are you functioning at your best? Are your levels where they need to be for peak energy, brain function, immunity, and long-term protection? That's a completely different question, and most routine labs are not set up to answer it. Welcome to Opti Labs, where we decode your lab results and reveal the deeper story behind the numbers. I am Dr. Austin Odighi. Where do reference ranges come from? We covered this a bit in the previous video. I'll go deeper here. Reference ranges are established by taking a large sample of people, running a test on all of them, and finding the range that contains 95% of the result. It is called the 95th percentile reference interval. But there is a problem with that method. The problem is that this method makes no distinction between healthy and unhealthy within that group. The population used to build the range may include people who are pre-diabetic, sleep-deprived, nutritionally depleted, or sedentary. If the majority of the population has suboptimal vitamin D, the normal range reflects that suboptimal population, and a result that looks perfectly fine on paper might still represent a state where your body is not functioning at its best. Let's go through the major markers and compare what labs consider normal versus what research and clinical experiences suggest is optimal. Let's start with vitamin D. Most labs define normal as 20 to 100 nanogram per milliliter. Anything above 20 is considered sufficient on paper. But for immune strength, bone health, and mood, a more useful target is 40 to 60. So if you are sitting at 22, you are technically normal, but not in a range that supports optimal function. That's where you may still see more infections, low mood, or gradual bone loss. Next is ferritin. Typical lab ranges fall somewhere between 12 and 300 picogram per liter in women, depending on the lab. In practice, however, most adults feel and function better between 70 and 150. Once ferritin drops below 30, symptoms like fatigue, hair shedding, and poor recovery tend to show up. So a value of 14 may pass as normal, but it doesn't reflect a well-formed system. Next is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. The standard range is about 0.4 to 4.5. However, many clinicians aim for a tighter window of 0.5 to 2.0 when someone is actually feeling well. Once TSH climbs into the 3.5 to 4.0 range, symptoms like fatigue, weight gain, constipation, and low mood often appear. It may be labeled normal, but it's not always ignored clinically. Next is fasting glucose. Anything under 100 mg per deciliter is considered normal. But for long-term metabolic health, a range of 75 to 90 is more ideal. Readings in the 95 to 99 range are still normal, but they sit at the higher end and can point towards early insulin resistance, especially when paired with other markers. HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c, 3 months average blood sugar. Below 5.7% is the standard definition of normal. A tighter, more optimal range is around 4.8 to 5.3%. A result like 5.5% won't raise alarms in a conventional setting, but it can signal early metabolic strain, particularly if fasting glucose is also trending high and insulin levels are elevated. There is fasting insulin. This isn't always included in routine testing, but it is one of the most revealing markers. Many labs list anything under 25 as normal, which is far too broad. A healthier range is below 8, ideally between 2 and 6. Once insulin starts rising above 10 to 15, it often indicates early insulin resistance long before glucose or hemoglobin A1C becomes abnormal. Let's talk about homocysteine. Standard ranges go up to 15. For cardiovascular and brain health, keeping it below 8 is a better target. Levels above 10 or 11 are already linked to higher risk of heart disease and cognitive decline, even if they are still marked as normal. Vitamin B6, B12 and folate play a central role in keeping this marker in check. And finally, we have LDL cholesterol. Typically, labs recommend keeping LDL below 100. But LDL alone doesn't tell the full story. The particle type matters. Small, dense LDL particles are more strongly linked to cardiovascular risk than larger, less dense ones. More advanced testing such as LDL particle number or APOB gives a clearer and more clinically useful picture. So why do doctors use standard reference range? This is an important part to understand. Doctors are not wrong to use standard reference range. They exist for good reasons. They are standardized, they are validated, they are used for diagnosing diseases in a clinical setting. Conventional medicine is built mainly to diagnose and manage disease. It is not set up first and foremost to fine-tune how well you function. That's a different objective. So if your focus is feeling your best, catching problems early, and really understanding what is happening in your body, you often need a level of detail that standard care doesn't usually go into. That's where integrative and functional approach, along with preventive cardiology, tend to come in. These practitioners are more likely to work with optimal ranges, dig deeper with expanded testing, and pay attention to patterns over time rather than relying on a single snapshot. So how do you apply this information to your own labs? Here's the practical takeaway. When you get your result, don't just look at whether you are flagged. Look at where you fall within the range. If your ferritin is 18 and normal starts at 12, you are not flagged, but you are at the low end and you probably feel it. If your TSH is 3.9 and you've been exhausted for over a year, that number is worth a conversation. You can advocate for yourself without dismissing what your doctor is telling you. The goal is a fuller picture, not a fight. Come in prepared, know the numbers, know the optimal ranges. Ask your doctor directly, is this optimal or just not abnormal? That question alone can shift the conversation. Next on this series, we are going to cover 10 blood test markers you should never ignore, even if your doctor doesn't say a word about them. These are the markers that tell you your risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurological decline, and more, sometimes years before symptoms appear. Subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss that video.